Hi, and welcome to Crash Course Cryptozoology. The Jersey Devil is a stranger cryptid among the wide roster of proposed or potential species in cryptozoology, and of course, as extension, zoology as a whole, because not only of its description, but because of its supposed or proposed origins. Today's video, though, focuses on the physical description aspect of the Jersey Devil and analyzes one of the theories surrounding it based on that description. For those who might be unfamiliar, the Jersey Devil is an animal or a creature reported from the Pine Barrens of the state of New Jersey in the United States. It's essentially described generally as a flying creature, often with the features of an equine of some sort, whether that's a horse or an equine-like mammal like a goat or a deer, possessing some kind of protrusions, usually described as horns, on the head, and bearing membranous bat-like wings. Far from what one would expect to be a naturally occurring animal. However, there is a theory that has been posited that attempts to explain away the oddities that surround the Jersey Devil's appearance with an animal that does naturally occur, specifically the hammerhead bat. In short, this theory states that this creature being called the Jersey Devil is actually a misidentified hammerhead bat, and in all likelihood that there is a colony of said hammerhead bats somewhere in the Pine Barrens, often being mistaken for Jersey Devils. To begin to analyze the validity of this theory, of course, we need to go over the important questions. First off, does a hammerhead bat bear a resemblance to general descriptions of the Jersey Devil? In fact, we find that surprisingly it does. It of course bears the bat-like membranous wings, the general mammalian appearance, but especially in terms of the colonial depictions of the Jersey Devil, the head is exceedingly similar, and the ears are in such a placement that they may in fact account for horn-like descriptions. And of course, the robust horse-like head, the placement of the eye, and even the shape of the snout all match considerably well. To imagine seeing an overgrown hammerhead bat, perhaps in a position like this, one can imagine why someone might think this to be a monster. However, we're not talking necessarily about oversized hammerhead bats. We're talking about normal hammerhead bats. So, hammerhead bats look enough like the Jersey Devil to maybe be something like a mini Jersey Devil. The question is, how would hammerhead bats get to New Jersey in the first place? That's kind of the crux of this theory, because hammerhead bats are not native to North America. In fact, they're native to an entirely different continent. They're native to Africa, including places like Gabon, Republic of the Congo, and some portions of Nigeria, just to name a few countries. But what does that have to do with hammerhead bats arriving in North America? Well, time frame is important in this case. The Jersey Devil story started gaining most of its popularity in the Revolutionary War era. We're talking the latter half of the 1700s into the Civil War in the 1800s period. Between the times of the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, you have the establishment of what is widely known historically as the Trade Triangle. Essentially, the Trade Triangle was a system of waterbound trade routes between England, Western Africa, and the eastern United States, including some of the West Indies islands. You had a lot of goods being traded, one of them, of course, leading into the Civil War era, being slave trade. This trade route is very well documented, and so we have a lot of maps we can actually look to see what was getting traded and where. Now, interestingly enough, we do see that right in the coastal center of what is known to be hammerhead bat habitat in Africa, there is a route that would have brought slaves over from the western coast of Africa into the islands of the West Indies and up into essentially what would have been modern-day New Jersey, along with sugar, molasses, and other goods. There is, of course, the problem that first these bats would have arrived in the West Indies, in those ports, and the amount of bats that would have come to the United States instead of to the West Indies Islands seems perhaps small. If we're assuming that bats got on these ships, why would we assume they came to the mainland United States and not arriving in the West Indies Islands? It isn't as though it's impossible. The numbers would likely be questionable. So far we have the fact that hammerhead bats, while they do resemble the Jersey Devil, are the wrong size in most cases, and even if they were the right size, they have this blockage of the West Indies in the trade route that they would have come to the United States through. Again, it isn't impossible that some bats made it over and perhaps formed a breeding population. Of course, the final question here is, could hammerhead bats survive in North America, and in the Pine Barrens especially? Ironically enough, there is something special about the Pine Barrens that lends some credence to this idea. Hammerhead bats are what are called frugivores, meaning they feed mainly on fruit, and fruit does not grow in necessary abundance in much of the wilderness areas of New Jersey, but berries like cranberries do grow in very great amounts in the Pine Barrens, especially in the swamps and wetlands. So all in all, we have a species that does resemble the Jersey Devil, but falls short on several fronts, such as size. Did have a route directly to what would have been the Pine Barrens area, although it had some blockage along the way that is probably considerable, and may very well have a viable habitat within specifically the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. The theory seems to fall short on some fronts, but certainly does lend a lot of very interesting ideas to itself, and matches up with timeframes and descriptions properly enough to at the very least be considered. Whether or not its validity is proven is an entire matter of itself. If I've missed any information on hammerhead bats that is important to this discussion, I would love to know. And as always, let me know what you think about this issue in the comment section. That being said, until next time.